Hey everyone, Mrs. Norris here. So I'm going to be showing you how to complete documents A and B, really just document A, for our DBQ online assignment. And then you'll be doing B, C, and D on your own. But I do want you to take note of the fact that when you are done with this, to be able to move on to the next task, you need to submit a screenshot of finished A and a screenshot of finished B to be able to move on to the next task. Now, it's the same direction in C and D, but you'll notice there's no tutorial. That's because you'll be expected to do C and D on your own, but the same direction is here. Submit a screenshot of C and a screenshot of D separately to move on to the next task. And in this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to do that with document A, and then you can do B, C, and D on your own. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start by clicking on my Clever button and logging in. So again, you're going to log in with Google. I'm a teacher, so I'm going to use my teacher login. And then I'm going to click on my DBQ project button. And again, if you don't have it saved already as a favorite, then it might be in the More Apps section, or if you type DBQ project in the search field, it will show up as one of your resources. Okay. So in the DBQ online dashboard, again, yours looks a little bit different from mine. Just make sure that you get to your assignment. Okay, and so we did the cover together. I just kind of wanted to go over, review what we have already done. We also did the hook exercise for the most part together. You should have come up with a newspaper headline for a pro-American newspaper and a newspaper headline for a pro-Mexican newspaper. And for those of you who were confused, a headline is the big bold part that's at the top before an article. Okay, so that's what a headline is. So we did that one basically for the most part together. And then I wanted to show you what a finished version of the background essay would look like. So I have next to each paragraph, I've got my hashtags. Some of the hashtags only required 2 or 3, and then some of them required a little bit more because it was a longer paragraph with more information. You can see that I've got my blue sticky note to say what map 1 and map 2 are about, to give a caption for them. I used my red circle for all of my dates, okay, and then my purple square for places and people, okay. And then I used my green highlighter for the bold words. And again, if I were to click on it, like I know I'm going to have to know what annexation is. So just to remind myself, I'm going to click on it and it gives me the definition in US history, adding on a state to the rest of the country. Okay. And then our orange highlighter for highlighting each sentence, the first sentence in each paragraph, and then my black sticky to type the question that we're going to be answering. So what I suggest that you do is I suggest that you pause the tutorial. And in fact, I'm going to, one thing that we haven't done is split screen. So I'm going to take a minute to do that right now. So I have my DBQ online open. And then I have this tutorial that will be up here showing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split them. And if you have this dualless, it makes it much easier. So what I would do, and I don't need this much space, so I'm just going to move this over a little bit more. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so that I can see everything. Now, I know that some of you were having issues with being able to see the full DBQ screen. So if you want to have the 2 tabs open, one with this tutorial and one with the DBQ, both open at the same time to be able to toggle between the two, that's totally fine. Again, it's not a requirement to split your screen. It's just for some of you, it might be an easier way to follow the directions and look at your work. And some of you, it might be a little bit more challenging, so you might have to have 2 tabs open instead of 2 screens. That's up to you, whatever works easiest for you. Okay, so what I suggest that you do right now is I suggest you take a pause on this tutorial and you kind of go over the answers here, become familiar with the answers. If there's anything on yours that you might have missed, then you can go back and change that. I can see right now that there are some purple squares that I need to add, and I'll do that at a later time. But if you want to go ahead and pause the tutorial and review the answers and then start the tutorial back up when you're ready to move on, we will do that. Okay, so moving on to the next, which was our question and pre-bucketing. One thing I did want to go over with some of you is that you have the option, so please take it, to make your text boxes bigger. So when you click on the text box and drag this to make it bigger, then I can see all of your answer in the text box. Okay, so please make sure that when you are writing your answers, to eliminate the scroll bar that might show up, that you make your text boxes bigger. So again, you should have answered 1, 2, and 3, which we did together. But again, what's the analytical question? Was the United States justified in going to war with Mexico? What is the meaning of justified? And we opened up dictionary.com to find the answer. Was it okay? Did they have the right? And then rewriting the question in our own words. Was it acceptable or okay, or was it right for the United States to go to war with Mexico? Okay, and then you should have made your claim, and you should have come up with 3 answers why. All right, so that's where we left off in the last tutorial. Let's take a look at document A. So I am going to make this screen a little bit bigger so you can see what's on the side here. And then if I need to make this a little bit smaller, I can. So again, you should be watching the tutorial while I'm going over these. Now, what you'll notice on mine that you don't see on yours is these little eyes and exclamation points and question marks. Those go along with our code clues. So you are expected to use these code clues, at least 2 per code clue. So at least 2 eyes, at least 2 exclamation points, at least 2 question marks, and at least 2 C's for connect. Okay, so we have the I's are for interesting information. The exclamation points are for important information. That's going to help me answer the question. And then the question marks are for any information in here that I don't understand. So what I don't have is the C's. So I just wanted to show you what we could do. If I click on one of these and then I click on the copy, I can change the color to purple, and I can change the letter to a capital C. Okay. Oops. Okay. So now I can copy this again 3 times. I'm going to move this over here. And then one more copy. Okay, so now I have them all set up to use while I'm reading the paragraph. I'm also going to want to make sure that I put a red box around the source information. That's one of the first things that we're going to do. So if you would like to pause this tutorial and get yourself set up with some of these squares, and all I used was the text box, and I used the different colors, orange, green, blue, and purple to go along with my code, my key over here. I don't need this, I'm going to get rid of it. And I set them up over here. So why don't you pause this tutorial, get yourself set up, and then we'll move on. All right, so again, we want to use these at least 2 times, if not more, while we are reading. And then we also want to make sure that we put a red box around our source information, which is the very first thing that we'll see. So we have the source is John L. O'Sullivan, which we know is the reporter who came up with the idea of manifest destiny. This is an excerpt from the article Annexation, which we just reviewed is when a state is added to the country as a whole. The United States Magazine and Democratic Review, Volume 17, July 1845. So that's my source information. So I'm going to put a red box around it. Doesn't need to be that big, so I am going to resize it. There's my source. Now that's going to be important later for when I am writing my essay and I can identify the source where my facts or my supporting information came from. Okay, so let's get into the paragraph. And again, I'm going to do the first one for you. I'm going to model it for you, and then you'll do B, C, and D on your own. Okay. It is time for opposition to the annexation of Texas, so adding Texas to the United States, to cease. So just looking at that sentence, there's some words in there that I don't know, pretending. So opposition and cease. So what I might want to do is have dictionary.com open. So that I can find out what these words mean that I might need some help with. Okay, so opposition and cease. So I'm going to go to definitions. So opposition is the action of opposing, resisting, or combating. So a person or group of people opposing, criticizing, or protesting something. I know that from, for example, 2021, all the things that happened last summer. Protesting means that people are fighting against something that they don't believe in. Okay, so that gives me a better idea of what opposing means. And then let's do stop. So I don't need that. Cease, sorry, which we'll find out means to stop something, to stop. So what I'm going to do to help myself out is I'm going to just write the word protesting. I'm going to write the word protest just to help me out with what that word means. And then I'm also going to copy this and I'm going to write the word stop. And these are tools to help me understand what these words mean. So it is time for the protest to the annexation or adding of Texas to stop. Texas is now ours. Let their reception into the family be frank, kindly, and cheerful. So reception, let's say I don't know what that word means. So I'm going to go here. The act of receiving, so to be receiving, or the state, so receiving would be like to be getting, to get. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a copy of this, and I'm going to put this right here. Their reception, they're coming into the family, I'm going to say. And you can see that there's a scroll bar. I don't want that. So okay. So Texas is now ours. So he's saying that Texas now belongs to the United States. Let them come into our family with kindness. Okay, so let them join into the United States family with kindness. Other nations have undertaken hostile interference against us. Well, I know that hostile is when somebody is angry or uses force. Let me double check though. So again, I'm just toggling between going between my dictionary.com and my DBQ online. Of or characteristic of an enemy. So they're acting like an enemy. Okay. Other nations have undertaken hostile interference against us. So there are enemies. hampering our power, so trying to take away our power, limiting our greatness, and checking the fulfillment of our manifest destiny. Remember, that's the word that he came up with, to overspread the continent allotted by providence or God. So I'm going to see that word allotted. Because it's in past tense, it's not going to let me. A lot, to divide or distribute by share or portion, to give out. Okay, so it's basically saying right here that it's given to us by God for the free development of our yearly multiplying millions. So I'm going to break that down. Okay, hampering our power, so limiting our greatness and checking the fulfillment of our manifest destiny. Well, I remember from checks and balances that when you're checking one group against the other, you're making sure that they're doing things correctly. So they're checking, they're like trying to put a stop to make sure that it's okay. The fulfillment of our manifest destiny to overspread the continent allotted by providence. So God has given us this ability to spread out across the United States and develop it how we need to support our millions of people that are being born every day. Okay. California will probably fall away from Mexico. So he's saying now that California is next on the list. Imbecile and distracted. Let's look up that word imbecile. A dunce, a blockhead, or a dolt. So don't stand there like an imbecile, open the door. So like dummy, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of this. Move it over here. And so it sounds like what he's saying is Mexico is not smart and they're distracted and they can't exert any real governmental authority over such a country. So he's basically saying that Mexico doesn't have the power really to stop us, right? That they don't have enough power. They're dummies. That's what he's saying. It's his word. It's what he's using. The Anglo-Saxon foot is already on California's borders. So he's saying, well, we're already almost there, so we might as well take it. We're armed with the plow and the rifle. What's a plow? Let's look that up. Okay, so that's the British version. Tell me what a plow is in the English version. An agricultural implement used for cutting, lifting, turning, and partially pulverizing soil. So it has something to do with farming. So they've got the farming stuff and the rifle. So they're armed, ready to take over the land, and marking its trail with schools and colleges, courts and representative halls, mills and meeting houses. All this will happen in the natural flow of events. So he's basically saying that our settlers are there. They're at the border of California. They're ready. They've got their instruments to start farming, and they have their instruments to start fighting, right? The plow and the rifle, and marking its trail with schools. So they're just ready to start developing this land. And because Mexico is an imbecile and can't do it themselves, it's just within their God-given right to take it from them, right? That's basically what it seems like he's saying. So let's look at our code clues. So things that I found important. Let's see, let's start with interesting. So he's saying Texas is now ours. I think that's, well, actually, it's not really interesting. It's actually more of important. So let me use this here. Come on. Texas is now ours. Um, he's saying, I think that this is interesting that he says that they're a hostile interference against us because they're not hostile. Other nations have undertaken hostile interference against us. They're not being hostile towards you. They're not acting as your enemy. They're trying to defend themselves against you because you feel like, which again, I find this to be important, the fact that they feel like it's their God-given right to take this land. Okay, land that wasn't theirs to begin with. All right. Um, all of these words that I didn't know, this could be my information that I didn't understand. Come on. Might need to separate these in future documents. There we go. So all these words that I didn't understand can be marked with my question marks. It is interesting to me that that he says that they are armed with the plow and the rifle. It's important that he believes that all of this is going to be the natural flow of events, again, because it's been their God-given right to do this. Now, how can I connect any of this? Looks like I accidentally moved to C, so I'm going to move this. Come on. Move you out of the way. These aren't as convenient, but there's something. Reception. Okay. Connecting. Well, I do remember the stuff about how they have been taking land from the Native Americans. I think that that's an interesting connection between what I learned in the past and what they're doing again this time. They're basically, I think that they felt the same way about the Native Americans. And that's something that I remember learning when we talked about the Native Americans. Okay. And let's see any other connections. So I know that, like, for example, when a new person comes into the family, you want to greet them with kindness and welcome them into the family in that way. So again, I've used my code clues and now I'm ready to answer the questions. So how does John O'Sullivan feel about the United States annexing Texas? Sounds like he's happy about it, that now Texas is going to be a part of the United States. It was our God-given right to do it. So it's something that he's happy and excited about, it seems like. He seems happy and excited to have Texas be a part of the United States and wants them to be welcomed with kindness, and let's leave it with kindness, because that's definitely what we've got going on here. Let their reception into the family be frank and kindly and cheerful. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that because that's important to number 1 here. Okay, that's where I found the answer. In your own words, and I'm going to actually do this. Stop. In your own words, what does O'Sullivan mean when he says it is our manifest destiny to overspread the continent allotted by Providence? Well, if I break it down, he's basically saying it's our God-given right to join this land, to develop this land. It's the United States God-given right to have this land. And I'm going to highlight this in yellow. Um, he says it right here. It's God, right? It's our God-given right to have that land. After Texas, what is the next likely candidate for American annexation? Seems pretty clear that it's California. And I'm going to do this in green. I mean, he literally says that they'll probably be next. It's literally what he says. What does O'Sullivan have to say about Mexico's ability to govern? And it says it right here. They're imbeciles and they're distracted, and they can never exert any real government authority over such a country. So I'm just going to put that in quotes. Quote here. Quote. I'm just going to copy that sentence. Okay. And then because imbecile is basically dummy, I'm going to add that. He's basically saying they are too dumb to govern California. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that in purple. Okay. What do you suppose O'Sullivan means by Anglo-Saxon foot? Well, I know that Anglo-Saxon is another word for white. So we're talking about a time during Western settlement. So he's talking about the white settlers moving west. Okay. And let's look at the rest of that sentence. The Anglo-Saxon foot is already on California's borders. So they're already there. They're already in California, ready to go in and start farming and start fighting. Okay. And I don't really need to highlight anything because it's just asking for what I think it means. How can this document be used to justify America's going to war with Mexico? Well, he's basically saying it's their God-given right to do it. And so if it's their God-given right, they're going to fight for it. So that's what I would say about number 6. And then number 7, it says, how can this document be used to argue against America going to war? So we're supposed to look at it from both ends. So we have on the one hand, and I'm not going to answer those two. I want you to answer those two, 6 and 7. So on the one hand, we have the fact that many of the settlers believe under manifest destiny that it's their God-given right to be there. It's their God-given right to have that land. Okay. So if I were to highlight where I would find that, I would say this right here. Okay. I would say, the fulfillment of our manifest destiny to overspread the continent allotted by Providence for the free development of our yearly multiplying millions. Okay. So that's one way that he feels that they are justified. So I'm going to put, I have to remember to click stop drawing. How can this document be used to justify America's going to war with Mexico? Well, what I've highlighted in blue, they feel like it's Many white settlers feel like it's their God-given right to be there, to own that land, so they should be able to take it. Okay. Now, what would be the fight, the argue against that? I feel like that's something you need to come up with on your own, right? I mean, this is one person's point of view. So if you were in front of John Sullivan, what would you argue with him to play sort of the devil's advocate, to tell him that, no, that's actually not true? This is why you should not. So again, 6 and 7, I'm going to have you answer on your own. Once you are done with document A, and I'm going to add it to the directions. It's not there right this moment, but by the time you watch this tutorial, it will be there. I'm going to add to the directions that you highlight your evidence in the text for your answers where you can, and then just use the different colors and show me what those colors are, rather than in the past where we've put a number 1 next to it or something like that. Instead, change your colors around and then make sure you tell me in your answer what color goes with what answer. Okay, so again, just as I did for here, I've shown that the orange goes with that answer, the yellow, and so on. So I'm going to add that direction. Again, while you're looking at this tutorial right now, it's not there. It will be there by the time you watch this. And then you're also going to answer 6 and 7 on your own. I feel like there are opinion pieces that you can kind of come up with by yourself. When you are done, your task is to take a screenshot of this, and no, you won't have all of the information in your screenshot. What I do want you to take a screenshot of is just this first part right here. Okay, where I can see that you've done the work of labeling and highlighting and all of that, and that you've started your answers, and then that will let me know that you're ready for me to look at it and give you feedback in the DBQ resource. Let's name this. So we're going to name this with our first and last name, and then just document A. Doc A. And then you'll do the same thing for document B, doc B, and then submit those two into the first part of this module. And then when you're done with C and D, you'll do the same thing, one for document C and one for document D, and you'll put that here as well. Okay, so again, you're going to take a screenshot, and you don't have to take a screenshot of the whole screen, just the section. If you only know how to take a screenshot of the whole screen, that's fine as well. And then that's what you are submitting here. And then I'm going to repeat this one more time. Please make sure that you highlight where you found your answers in the text. And then instead of putting a 1 or 2, please tell me what color goes with that answer in your reading. It's not on the directions right now in this tutorial, but it will be there by the time you watch this. Okay. So you'll do A, B, C, and D on your own, and then stop. Work on any missing or late work, or if you have an ongoing assignment, work on that while you're waiting for the next section module to open up. Don't start with the essay until next time.